Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'd like to welcome Dr. Nicole Solomos.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure, thanks for joining me, Nicole. In the previous episode, my introductory episode, I mentioned that Nicole and I connected initially on LinkedIn. When I shared my Kevin MD tribute article to my radiologist, Nicole commented that Doctors for Laza had been her radiologist too. I was surprised and moved to find someone else who knew him and that she and I shared that special connection. Nicole is a sports and lifestyle physician and a certified life, health, and well-being coach. Today, we'll be talking about some things for doctors to keep in mind when they visit their own doctor, and responsibilities of patients, no matter who they are, to fill their doctor in on important aspects of their health, as well as the importance of being an active participant in their own plan of care decision-making. So thanks again, Nicole. And I'd like to speak to what would you most like our audience to know about you as we begin our conversation today?
Well, thank you for the gracious introduction. What I'd most like people to know about me is that I'm human, just like everybody else. And I think doctors in general, this applies to. Sometimes as physicians, we have trouble admitting that or showing it, but we're vulnerable. We have emotions. We experience life just through a different lens sometimes, just because of our background. But everybody, regarding how they see life, how they experience life, is based on how they've, what they've done in the past, or the experiences they've had. So just that we're all flesh and blood and human, and that includes me. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's how Dr. Todd Otten started our very first episode as well. And that's important to know, right? Doctors are people too. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So as we start our conversation, I did want to give you an opportunity to talk about Doctors for Laza, if there was anything that you wanted to share, your experience with him, how you felt when you found out he died.
Right. So yeah, I was, surprised, I guess, when you said that he was your radiologist and that you had based what you were doing on him. And because I had a couple of procedures where he was my radiologist too. And I had a special experience with him. Again, it was twice, I believe, 2 or 3 times that, I met him and sat with him. He took a lot of interest in showing me, my results, or like, oh, look here, this is where it is, and this is where the clip is, and, going over things in great detail and with great care. So I did take exception to it. I noticed that he was very attentive. He called me very quickly. I mean, just not things that all physicians do, whether you're a physician or not, as the patient. So yeah, it was special in that way. I did take note of it. I noticed him. I noticed his name, like, in a different way than usual, I would say. And then regarding how I felt, so I was on staff at the hospital that Doctors for Laza worked at, or one of them. I'm not sure if he worked at more than one, but I was on staff at that time. So I did receive a notice through the organization's email. And, so when I met him, I knew he was on the young side. I was thinking he was a little bit older than me. We all make our estimations, right? But I knew he wasn't like an older guy. So that's number one. You're like, wait, what happened? And then of course there are things that happen to younger people, like, as you are very well acquainted with, cancer,
Right.
other illnesses that can certainly strike anyone at any age. So that went through my head. But I mean, I have to be honest with you, as a physician and being in the coaching circles, physician suicide went through my head as well. And, I have to say, reading the obituary, that's kind of what I thought.
Mhm.
Um, and so I had met him, like I told you, on my own, because I was a patient, not because I was a physician on staff. I didn't really go to the hospital. I was just on staff kind of for insurance purposes or
Mhm.
whatever, for
Mhm.
something I had to do.
Mhm.
So I did ask one or two of my colleagues who are orthopedic surgeons at the time. And they were all on staff there for many, many years. And so they didn't know him.
Mhm.
And that isn't unusual. It's just that they had no idea. They didn't, I guess they hadn't looked at their email or they didn't make note of it because they didn't know him. So I didn't have an answer. It was like swirling around in my head for a long time, really a long time, because I had no idea what happened and I could only speculate. So just not so long ago, it's coincidental that we are having this conversation now, but not so long ago, I had met up with someone who had worked in the radiology department at one point, and they told me what they thought had happened, and they did think it was physician suicide. And but I didn't, you know, I like to just protect other people. I mean, so I just was like, well, this person isn't 100% sure, so I'm not going to, I'm not gonna.
Mhm.
It was a year. It was a year afterwards anyway, so it wasn't. I didn't have anybody to talk to about it anyways.
Right. Right.
So, and it's not something that I would just be like, "Hey, Kim, I
Right.
heard blah blah blah," because I knew, like, I think I was finding out that you were very, very, um, not involved, but that you had a lot of like strong emotions. You were working around this, and so I wouldn't just like blurt it out to you, So,
Mhm.
so
Right.
I just still, but it was like something that was heavy on me,
Right.
just because of just how pleasant and attentive and human Dr.
Mhm.
Sperlaza was when with me, and obviously with everyone because he was the same way with you. So
Mhm.
and so it's heavy on me to think just how people can be suffering that much, and physicians. I know that there's so much suffering, so it's just really heavy on me. I even have attempted, and I think I'm still going to attempt to try to start a coaching program for the organization that I work for the physicians. Um, so anyway, it was a mysterious, heavy, and just kind of bewildering experience for me.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your past perspective. And as you know, we just I shared you with you mine and the previous episode. And so maybe someday when we get to meet in person, we can chat a little more because it sounds like it was heavy for both of us. And again, like you don't want to be talking about people, right? And so just to process it, it's hard because there isn't anybody to talk to about it.
Right.
So yeah, so
Right. You had used in the previous episode where I heard your story, you had used a term disenfranchised, I believe.
disenfranchised grief. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is.
Well, certainly I had never put a name to it, but
Mhm.
certainly as a physician, I think you know, you're well aware
Mhm.
of those situations because we all have HIPAA laws. You do too as a physical therapist, I know that.
Right.
But just saying, like, I've been, pronounced people, or I've multiple times that I've been through something where I can't um share it,
Right.
um even involving people that others around me may know fairly well,
Right.
especially them,
Right. Right.
but it's always, you just can't. So I think I've never heard anybody put a
Mhm.
name to it. but
Mm-hmm.
I'm certainly very familiar with that. And in this case, it certainly applies perfectly because, as you said, nobody that I knew until I met you
Mm-hmm. Right.
knew him.
That nobody in your life knew him, right? That was the
Right.
same. Yeah, for
Right.
me. So that was a blessing that when I shared that on LinkedIn, that you and I were already connected and that you commented. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking today. So
Right.
I joke around that through all this, I've gotten what I needed when I needed it, except my parathyroids. So
Right. Right.
anyway, so but that sounds wonderful if for you to be able to start a coaching program for your organization for physicians. I would love that to do that for my healthcare system. So if you get something going, I'll be even more interested in hearing about it. Um,
Right. Right.
well, thank you for sharing. So another thing we were going to discuss is as a life health and well-being coach and a physician, you specialize in midlife metabolic health for women. And I was wondering if you'd speak to what you'd like doctors to keep in mind when they visit their own doctor. So during our initial conversation, we had a brief conversation a week ago, and we touched on how it's okay and even desired when a doctor visits their own primary care physician, for example, that they don't have to act like they know everything already. And I wanted to say that no human knows everything. Doctors are human. No doctor knows everything or should be expected to. And that should actually come as a relief. And one example I thought of, and you're going to share your own, is that if you were a pathologist, a neonatologist, or a radiologist, your own doctor does not expect you to be an expert in midlife metabolic health. And likewise, you should not expect them to already know everything about caring for a preterm infant if you were a neonatologist and they showed up in the NICU with their premature baby. Because
Mhm.
you might think, because each doctor might think, well, I don't expect them to know that, but I should know everything, right? So I was
Right.
wondering if you could just speak a little to what you'd like doctors to keep in mind when they're visiting their own doctor.
Right. So I think you have to have humility and let your guard down and just kind of try to convey that to the physician as well. Like, hey, you know, yeah, we're in this together, we're both doctors, but let's like forget about that. I mean,
Mm,
as the physician, yeah, I don't want you to forget you're my doctor, but forget that I'm the doctor, right? Forget that, like, don't have any preconceived notions. Don't assume, right? We know what that means usually. And so uh just go with it and really, like, if you have a question, ask it. Again,
mm,
we always say it's cliche to say there's no stupid question, but there really, especially with your own health, there is no stupid question. If you don't know it, yeah, we can do our research and things, but I find that coaches need coaches, doctors need doctors. And so I am my primary specialty for a long time now was sports medicine. I'm non-surgical sports medicine, but I have been having a musculoskeletal problem lately, and I just constantly try to figure it out, try to figure it out, try to figure it out. But I've been seeing a physical therapist, and I don't, I kind of listen too, because sometimes you're really smart, even if it's your own field, but you could, when it's you,
right.
sometimes you can't compartmentalize, and so you just, and or you'll like skip over some important things. And so I think we all need to just be the patient when we are the patient, regardless of your degree or your field of interest, or your past experience, or
Mm,
whatever it may be. And just try to have as human as of an interaction as you can with your practitioner, your physician, and ask the questions. And if listen, I've been on the receiving end, being a patient of a doctor who has been very condescending, very, and it wasn't just one
mm,
instance, right?
mm,
And I'll never forget those,
mm-hmm.
ever.
Right.
So, we can have really positive experiences with physicians like you and I had with Dr. Srilaza, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, and other physicians. He's not the only one that I've
Right.
had a positive experience with, but
Yes. Yes.
you can also have very negative experiences and be really angry, and that's not going to help anyone. Um, for me, it sends me into this tailspin, like wondering what the heck they're thinking and why they're
Mm-hmm.
that way and
Mm-hmm.
what, so, and then maybe even like forget about my own health. So I understand that too. That's why I hope the message reaches physicians to be human with
Mm-hmm.
patients, whether they're physicians or not. And with physicians, like, don't condescend.
Mm-hmm.
One time I was seeing an OBGYN, and the OBGYN, I guess that physician had asked me to get some records from the past. And I'm telling you, I've been to medical school in Long Island, I've been all over, and I couldn't access the records. Or I didn't. Let's put it that way. I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And that physician was like, "Well, what would you say if your patient did that to you?" Something like that. And I was like, I mean, I didn't say it at the time. I was just really angry, but in my head, I'm like, I would give them grace, and I would be like, "Yeah, I get it."
Right.
Because it's not easy to get records from 20 years previous, right?
Right.
Especially when you're in med school, your mom's up there, I don't know, so I think it's important for everybody to just like calm down and,
Mm-hmm.
and try to show your human side and like your understanding and grace and patience and all that good stuff.
I appreciate you sharing that. And during the course of my having cancer the 3 times in a couple years, I added it all up and I saw 33 doctors, even if it was for one test or procedure. If you count all the radiologists and anesthesiologists, and because I had my 3 surgeries at 3 different hospitals, and I've had all the kinds of experiences you can have from, wonderful experiences with doctors, to experiences that actually describe as traumatic. So for you, it hasn't all been great, and so I appreciate you sharing, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? It's
Mhm,
all
mhm,
there.
mhm.
And so somewhat related to what you were just talking about is we also had spoken in our initial conversation about automatic negative thoughts. And the one thing you wanted to share with doctors is to talk about how it's okay to doubting yourself. And I feel like that's related to like imposter syndrome, if you wanted to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think I touched on it in the previous
Hmm.
conversation that we had, just a
Yeah.
minute ago, is that um, you know, yeah, we're always afraid of being found out, right? I think that's why we have our guard up as physicians, is like, oh my gosh, I can't possibly show that I don't know everything to this patient. And sometimes patient will call you out on it. I'm not joking.
Mm,
It's
right.
not always like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
I don't expect you to know everything, because I think they do.
Hmm.
And I think there are patients that'll get angry and really write you a bad review if you ever showed um vulnerability. Well,
Hmm.
there are some, I would say.
Right. Right. Right.
That's probably based on fear, on the patient's part. But so yeah, I think just the increased support that seems to have developed in the last few years, with coaching and physician coaching, and increased mental health awareness, and trying to decrease the stigma attached to getting help with your mental health or with any difficulty that you may be having professionally or personally, um, it's certainly a step in the right direction. We're not there yet, clearly.
Hmm.
Um, and so being able to be okay with not knowing everything, which is clearly just impossible. And most of the time, um, I think the saying or there's just a knowing that somebody that acts like they know everything is usually not the person that
Hmm.
knows much, right?
Right. Right. Right.
So so yeah, but knowing that you are just human, and that you may know it, you may have forgotten it, may need a refresher, whatever.
Mhm,
It can be, it's gonna happen, and
mhm.
it's okay.
Right. And I feel it's so important to talk about these things because I feel like every time a physician talks about these things, right, that another physician can it opens their mind a little bit to say, okay, yeah, me too, right? A
Right,
different
right.
kind of me too movement,
Yeah,
right?
different kind, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. And then so related, what you also were just speaking about to some degree was we had also mentioned the healing nature of being willing to be vulnerable and accept support. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, um, having a group of people, having even one person to bounce something off or to get coaching from or to just listen, save space for you, can be just so healing. I am board certified in lifestyle medicine, and one of the pillars is social connection, the
Mm,
pillars of health. Okay. So, there are so many different examples in our society. There's a famous photo of two infants that were in the isolate. I believe they're in the NICU. One
mhm,
infant was struggling to survive, to believe it or was not thriving, and the other one put the arm around,
mhm,
and there's a picture. I'm losing exactly what it's called. I think it's the something hug. Anyway, it's very
mhm.
famous if you look it up.
Uh-huh.
And then that infant thrived
Mhm.
because they
That's
put them together, and
yes.
so it's just, and even,
Mhm,
I mean, I know I learned in medical school or somewhere along my training that, I was trained as an osteopath, so I'm a DO.
mhm,
And I believe it was in medical school that I learned that just touching a patient can
mhm,
really improve their experience by a lot. It's
mhm,
not by a little, it's by a
mhm,
lot. And sometimes we don't, believe it or not, in a patient physician encounter, we don't touch the patient. I
mhm,
mean, clearly it has to be appropriate, obviously,
mhm.
but
Right.
I would say that most times it is.
Right, right.
Um, and so, um, yeah, the human connection, the human understanding, is just so key to physician health.
Yeah, 100%. And when you talk about connection, so I hope every physician can find a sense of community. And on LinkedIn, if you aren't active on LinkedIn, there's a wonderful, we could connect you with wonderful physicians. And like you said, in those coaching circles, right, there's a lot of support there.
Mhm.
So there's support out there. You just have to find it.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Another thing that we had touched on in our conversation that I'd like you to speak to is this is kind of directing this to patients that we talked about them saying, well, you're the doctor, and how as patients that they have a shared responsibility to fill you in on important aspects of their health, participate in decision making. What would you like to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, that happens to me frequently. I don't know. I've never like researched statistics. I don't know if it happens more to women physicians than men or if there's anything, but it happens to me a lot, right? So, um I think about it like why? And I think that a lot of when patients say, "Well, you're the doctor, you tell me." And and I say, "But you're the patient." And but I think that them asking me or saying that is probably mostly based out of fear,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because patients, I think, fear making the wrong decision. I think it's important for a patient or anyone to know that there's probably, in very few cases, is there a right or wrong decision. It's just the decision that's best for you, right? I do injections in knees a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and I would say that this is probably why or where, the situation that I hear that statement made the most. And, um, for me, I'm like, I give these shots all the time. It's like no big deal, right? For me, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving the shot, right?
Right.
But I understand, like, people are anxious about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where it comes from. I think it's fear, anxiety, the fear of making the wrong decision. Oh my gosh, what could happen, Um, and and maybe some lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So I do try to explain it as best I can. Um, and obviously tell them what the bad outcomes could be. Um, and obviously what the benefits could be that I can, guarantee. I can't guarantee it. There are no guarantees in life, but um, yeah. So I think uh, fear is probably what drives that. And then on
Mm-hmm.
the other side, physicians, we can't guarantee anything, right? Especially when we're doing a procedure and there could be a complication. So there's probably a little bit of reservation in our voices at times. And I'm sure patients can kind of pick up on that. Um, I would say that probably, I mean, just from the brief knowledge that I have in the past with the difference between a woman and how she says something and a man and how they say something, that there's an inflection in our voice usually that does inspire some uh, lack of confidence sometimes, the
Mm.
way we, and I just did
Okay.
it, but
Okay.
at the end
Yeah.
of our sentence, our
Intonate. Yeah.
voice
Intonation.
raises. Yeah. And so it could be, it may have something to do with that too, because our brain does
Mm-hmm.
things that we're not even aware of, right? So
Right.
I
Right.
think a lot of that issue, that statement is based on fear on both fear of some sort or reservation on some sort on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, that's a good point. So just so patients know, you have a shared responsibility with your doctor,
Right,
no matter
right,
who you are as the patient, even if you're a doctor yourself, right? That your doctor doesn't know everything, and they don't necessarily know what's best for you inside of you, or there could be a lot of issues going on for yourself, medically, socially, right, emotionally, that can impact the decision.
yeah,
It may or may not be
and
the right time for something that's elective. And that's why you have to share that information. Don't keep it inside your own head with your doctor, because they aren't mind readers.
right. For us, it's like we do this all the time. No
Mm-hmm.
biggie. But we know it's a biggie. But you know what I'm saying. It's just
Yeah,
the more information, the better.
exactly. Right. I agree. Well, thank you, Nicole. Could you please share any top tips you have for your colleagues, from seasoned physicians to medical students, or even those considering med school?
Right. So I think I'm gonna in with the interest of time, I'll probably skip to med students and people that might be interested in going into the medical field, specifically going to medical school. For med students, I think you should follow your passion. Because oftentimes you're trying to decide what do I want to do my residency in and where do I, and so controversial subject, but I wouldn't follow like the money or the
Mhm,
prestige. I would follow what you're truly
mhm,
interested in. Because anything, the sky's the limit as far as like what you can do with
mhm,
any field. But I think if you're not happy, and happy is a bad word, but if you're not
mhm,
passionate about something, it's going to show. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect the people that you treat. So I would just try to follow what you're passionate about rather than anything else. What you should, don't should yourself.
mhm. Yep.
Don't should on yourself, because it's not going to, it's just, it's much better to follow your passion. Um, and then for people that are considering going to medical school, and I'll focus on medical school because that's what I did.
Mhm,
Um, I think, and I have helped people that have followed me in the office in the past, but I just think it's so important to really try to picture yourself in the day to day,
mhm,
because listen, you may not be happy. I hate that word. I don't know why I keep using it, but you may not
mhm,
be really content being in an office all day.
mhm,
Radiology may seem really attractive, but can you sit in a dark room all day by yourself?
mhm,
And some people, yes.
mhm,
Yes, it is good for some people, but I think, um, do you wanna be standing on your feet doing high pressure operations all day? Some people, yes.
Mhm.
Some people no. Do you want to have a family life?
Mhm.
Right? Some people, yes, some people no. I mean, that's different than having a family, but, um, there's no right or wrong again. It's just try to, get information from doctors if you can and, like, treat and really, like, say, "Well, what is important to me?" And, "Do I wanna do shift work?" ER, like ER, let's give an example. That's very attractive to some people, and they can do 12-hour shifts 3 times a week and then have the rest of the time off to go hiking or
Mhm.
whatever you wanna do.
Right.
But, yeah, I think it's so important to, like, try to tailor it to what your interests and passions are and what you hope for, and try as best as you can to, like, imagine yourself living that life.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, thank you. I think that's great advice. Was there anything else that you wanted to share with our audience? You shared a
No.
lot of great nuggets. So, okay. Well, thanks. So how can our listeners get in touch with you?
So, yeah, I'm fairly active on Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, it's my name, Nicole Solomos, and on Instagram, I'm Food Fit Doc. On LinkedIn, I'm Food Fit Doc as well with my name underneath it. And then I do have a website. I'm not gonna mention it because I'm working on it, but,
Okay.
so, yeah, I would get in touch with me via social media, through you, anyway, any
Sure.
way
And
you
and
can.
then when you add your website, let me know and I can always add it to the show notes in the future when
Yeah,
you're up and running the way you want it to be.
yeah, cool. Alright,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Well, I'm like you. I have one as well, and there's not much on it, so I don't even mention it myself.
I don't
So
know why I mentioned it, but
yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say it and then I was like, "Eh."
Yeah, no. So basically, as you know, you can find me on LinkedIn
Yeah,
and please click like and subscribe. I've got many more great guests to come. So thanks again for being my guest today, Nicole. It was a pleasure to have you.
same, yeah.
Okay, thanks. So in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.